Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious today, right here in our Hyatt Place studios inside the American Space Museum in downtown Titusville. Marty Winkle, my cameraman, co-producer, and he's working the Streamlabs computer situation that's allowing us to have these green screens and show you the Hyatt Place there. We're only 10 miles away from Kennedy Space Center, and we're going to do a lot of talking today about Cape Canaveral because it was this week in 1949 that President Harry Truman signed a bill creating Cape Canaveral as our rocket ranch, as they call it around here. So we're going to look at some of that history a little bit, and we're also going to talk a little bit about some current events news and a birthday on the way, a cool shuttle astronaut's birthday on the way. But again, we thank the Hyatt Place for sponsoring Stay Curious. Here is a beautiful view from their top fifth floor of a launch that MarQ supplied us. From that fifth floor, you can also see off to the right, with a little bit of a telephoto lens, Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex, the familiar external tank and solid rocket boosters outside the Atlantis building, and the rocket garden there to the right. So we hope that you can come and visit that, but we know that you want to come and visit our museum because our beautiful nonprofit, though we don't have the fancy displays that they have at the Kennedy Visitors Complex, all of our guests enjoy us just as well, we think. Well, Marty, we've got some news in the today that we wanted to go through a little bit, current events, if you will. Got a beautiful Life magazine from 1963 showing a Saturn V rocket launching off pad 39, I guess that'd be 39A, on the points there of Cape Canaveral and Merritt Island. So, and let's get to today's little bit of history. On this date, May 12th in 1950, you're looking at Chuck Yeager, who flew for the last time that airplane behind him, the Bell X-1 rocket research airplane. That, of course, is historic for Yeager breaking the sound barrier in 1947 in this orange beast that flew 81 times. Yeager died at age 97 in 2020. It has not been gone that long. And part of the history of this historic flight of this rocket plane is that when Yeager broke the sound barrier in 1947, he had several broken ribs from a horse riding accident. So probably outside of Charles Lindbergh, Marty, the most famous aviator that wasn't an astronaut, don't you think? Hard to put anybody above those two, Charles Lindbergh and Chuck Yeager, who passed on being an astronaut. But that is in Smithsonian after 1950. That'd be, of course, 72 years ago. He flew it for the last time. Why? For an RKO motion picture, The Test Pilot. And then the Bell X-1 was turned over to the National Air Museum at the Smithsonian, and many of us have seen that there. All right, also in the news today is this picture has been circulating around of a black hole in the center of our Milky Way. This image was released by the Event Horizon Telescope collaboration just yesterday, and it shows a black hole at the center of the Milky Way. The black hole is called Sagittarius A because it's in the border of Sagittarius and the Scorpio constellations. And this is actually a black hole can't be seen because everything falls into it, light included. And when that light and other things go into the event horizon of the black hole, it heats up. So what we're seeing is the actual heated up event horizon where things are pouring into a black hole. This image was made by 8 synchronized radio telescopes around the world. So not only do you vaguely understand what a black hole is, but how does 8 synchronized telescopes work? But this is big science. Until you actually, here is Marcia Rickey, the chief scientist says that, well, actually, she's the chief scientist for the Webb telescope that we're going to see here in a minute, jumping ahead of time. So we're finally visualizing black holes, not with the Webb telescope, but with they're connecting 8 telescopes around the world that make a baseline of almost the entire diameter of the Earth, 8,000 miles. So that's what's cool about this. Also, there's where the black hole is in the center of our galaxy. Our galaxy, we're looking down on top of it. You see where our solar system is about 2/3 of the way out from the center, about 1/3 of the way in from one of the spiral arms. And our center of our Milky Way's also got kind of a bar across it. It's actually a barred spiral, we call it. Well, this is one of the most recent images from the Webb telescope on the left there, okay? And that's the Spitzer Telescope that my rocket fuel was hiding. The Spitzer Telescope had one mirror that was not even as big as any of the 18 mirrors that's on the Webb telescope. And this is a close Magellanic Cloud, which is a galaxy that's orbiting our own galaxy. You can see it in the southern hemisphere, those of you down there. But this is the best picture that Spitzer took, and this is just a warm-up shot of the Webb, of the same region of the sky. So already they see a tenfold increase in the details down there with the Webb telescope. And here's where you had Arizona's Marcia Ricci, chief scientist for the near-infrared camera, says, until you actually see the kind of image it delivers, you really internalize and go, wow. Just think of what we're going to learn from this new telescope. So we're all excited about the Webb telescope, named after the great director of NASA, James Webb. And another news item, Boeing Starliner given a go for launch on a week from today, Marty, Thursday, May 19th at 6:54 p.m. aboard a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket. And we celebrate in our Cape Canaveral room just a few feet away, our Cape Canaveral gallery. We celebrate the Atlas rockets, the Atlas II and III particularly, that launched 4 humans of the Mercury astronauts, John Glenn, Scott Carpenter, Wally Schirra, and Gordon Cooper were launched on an Atlas rocket. So how cool is it that from the 60s to 2020, almost 60-year span, they're going to launch humans again on an Atlas V rocket, but not next week. It's going to be uncrewed. Remember, Boeing had a sequencer problem when they launched 2.5 years ago. You thought Boeing might beat SpaceX to the first crewed launch of a non-governmental spaceship, but SpaceX not only has beat them, but they've sent I think 7 crews now to space in their SpaceX Crew Dragon. So NASA officials have cleared the Boeing Starliner crew capsule for next week's launch.
5 crews, I think.
5?
4
All right, Marty's correcting me here as I'm trying to go on here. I make mistakes, yes. I think there's 6, though.
We just launched crew 4, and we had a demo. That'd be 5.
And we had the Inspiration 4, and we had the private crew of 4 men. So that's 6, right? Okay, so you forget about those private companies that have launched twice, 4 men. Elon Musk launched 8 people in a 3-week span. It took NASA like 3 years to do that in the Mercury program, or in the Gemini program. So, yeah, keep me honest there, Marty, but yes, it's growing. We need a box score here to keep track of things. The Starliner is set to launch, like I said, next Thursday, May 19th at 6:54 p.m. Surely be a big crowd over there with our rocket hobo Ozzy Osbourne. And if all goes well, Starliner will dock with the space station's Harmony module 24 hours later on May 20th. And there is a May backup of the next day launch opportunity. So they have 2 days in a row that they can get the Starliner off. This is an artist's interpretation of how that would look. In Marty, did you see what that is? That's actually an EVA helmet, an astronaut in an EVA helmet watching the docking, which would never happen. They would never have an EVA going on when a spacecraft is coming in to dock because of the thrusters being tossing hydrazine and stuff around or whatever they use. There it is on the Atlas V rocket on pad 41 out at Cape Canaveral Space Force. And we're going to talk about Cape Canaveral Space Force here in a minute. There's the rocket launch of Cape Canaveral in a 1963 beautiful rendition that Life magazine put together. Marty, we got a birthday today. We want to wish a happy 60th birthday to Gregory Harold Johnson, whose nickname is Box Johnson. Twice an Endeavour pilot, born May 12th, 1962, in South Ruislip, Middlesex, United Kingdom. But he was raised in America in Fairborn, Ohio, and also Traverse City, but he went to high school in Fairborn, Ohio, so he's technically an Ohio-naut. Box Johnson piloted Endeavour twice, STS-123 in March 2008, and the last flight of orbital vehicle with the tail number 105, Endeavour. And of course, that was STS-134 in 2011. Not to be confused with another astronaut, Gregory Johnson. That Gregory Johnson's nickname is Ray J, and he piloted STS-125 in 2009, going on right now, 13 years ago, at the last Hubble upgrade mission on STS-125 is orbiting the Earth right now. Marty, we have a question.
Yeah, Dave Sang is asking, I have two questions. Will you be carrying the launch next week? In other words, are we going to video it?
Right. Probably not.
And then Paul Forrester, do you think that next Wednesday's 5 a.m. launch will give us another pre-dawn light-up? Controls spectacular.
Well, is that a pre-dawn launch of a SpaceX? I'm not up on that one, but thank you for asking. Thank you for thinking that I'm, knowledgeable enough to have an opinion about these things. But absolutely, we could get that jellyfish thing. Anytime you have a pre-dawn launch and it gets up high, it's catching some sun rays that we're not seeing. So, but sunrise is at 7. Probably it's about 6:45 now, Marty. I think almost 6:30.
That's what he's really asking.
Yeah.
I didn't read it correctly. Pre-dawn lit controls spectacular.
Yeah.
Or contrail, I mean.
Contrail. Yeah, we hope. We can only hope because there's a lot of physics involved there, and but the sun can be below the horizon, and still once it gets 15 miles high or something, it might be catching sunlight rays there. And as far as doing broadcasts that we enjoyed doing in the beginning of Stay Curious, Dave Stange. Why we don't do that is because we upgraded our equipment and we don't want anything to break. Though we've been talking about getting out of Space View Park and recording a few shows. But that gives us something to think about in a week to go. But the big deal is we don't have the Wi-Fi connection to do it. And we have to work off a hotspot, and it's so iffy. And you've got a lot of people out there that are feeding off of the one Wi-Fi that's out there. So we would have to put together our own hotspot for that. But we might. We know that they're enjoyable. But frankly, the pros do it a lot better than we do. But I might be out there and do a commentary or so forth. But thanks for asking about that, Dave. Finishing on Box Johnson here. There he is in space, enjoying his Superman moment, flying through the air. He is an Air Force Academy graduate. He was 34 combat missions in Operation Desert Storm in 1990, and hence his nickname, because he got a back injury that sent him home early from the Gulf War in 1990. And so all of his belongings were put in a box, and they set it on a table, and everybody in the barracks walked by, and there was this box, and somebody wrote on it, Box Johnson. And when he when he got the box and back with his platoon or whatever they call it, they all started calling him box. They call it what? Squadron. When they got together with his squadron, the nickname Box Johnson stuck. So pretty cool. Very involved in the shuttle external tank foam tests, investigating the Columbia accident. When he got out of NASA, obviously no more shuttles to fly. In 2013, he took an executive director position for the Center for Advancement of Science in Space, and he's now an executive with Lockheed Martin. And there's Box Johnson a few years ago out promoting space the way so many of our wonderful shuttle astronauts do. So happy birthday to Box Johnson, turning 60 today. And like I said, he is from Ohio. Not from Ohio. He grew up in Ohio. He graduated from Fairborn, Ohio, Parks Hill High School in 1980. And Fairborn is, if I got my finger over there, Fairborn's on the left side of the state. 25 astronauts can claim that they grew up or were born in Ohio. And, of course, the most famous is Neil Armstrong in Wapakoneta. Marty's got that at the top of his circle up there. Right where the astronauts got his hand is where my hometown is, Findlay, Ohio. No astronauts from there. Toledo's a little bit above it. You've got 6 or 7 astronauts from Cleveland. Of course, John Glenn is from Cambridge. 3 trips to the moon by these astronauts, which would be Armstrong, Lovell, and who would be the other Ohio naut that went to the moon? I'm going to have to look up that close. Robert Springer, a great friend of our museums, is from Wadsworth. No, he's from Ashland. And Judy Resnick was from Akron, Ohio. And I'm trying to look at the other Ohio naut went to the moon, but that'll give me something to look at later. Don't want to waste too much time on that, because all you people in Michigan, that's the state up north there, they get jealous when I talk about 25 Ohio nauts. We want to talk about this great president, Harry Truman. Harry Truman, on May 11th, 1949, created the world's most famous spaceport when he signed into law a bill providing 5,000 miles of guided missile test range, subsequently established as Cape Canaveral, Florida. And negotiations went right away with the British government to begin to build tracking stations in the Bahamas. Located in Brevard County, in a 1950s picture there, Cape Canaveral is now called the Space Force Station. And Kennedy Space Center is a separate entity, all of its own. This has been used for all of America's manned launches, and it's the only place on Earth where humans have been launched to the moon. Separated by the Banana River, Cape Canaveral is separated from Merritt Island, and then the Indian River on the other side separates Merritt Island from the actual coast of Florida, where Titusville is. And we want to talk a little bit about our wonderful Cape Canaveral Rocket Ranch here. That there is the lighthouse that has stood for 274 years, since 1848, before the Civil War. All right. And just to the top of this page is pad 36, where Jeff Bezos is going to launch his new Glenn rocket, a very powerful, over 300-foot tall, 18 feet in diameter wide first stage. That I'm a little worried about this lighthouse standing after a few dozen of those new Glenn rocket launches. But I know I'm on some boards, chambers around here, and some of my friends that are on the Cape Canaveral Lighthouse board say the tests have been done and it should be fine. But we'll see, as they say. But the first rocket launched on Cape Canaveral was, of course, the famous Bumper. All right. And that was the V-2 rocket that was captured right after the World War II, launched here on American soil in July 24th, 1950. So just a little over a year after President Truman signed into law creating Cape Canaveral Space Base, this is a V-2 rocket ready to launch. And then it took him 9 years, though, to test fire the first Titan intercontinental ballistic missile. And we've got many of our friends here at the museum. In fact, we just lost one that I'd like to do a little program about. Jack Martin, we lost him this week, and he worked out at the Cape Canaveral when it was called the National not administration, National Advisory Committee of Aeronautics, was NACA, the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics. That is who ran NASA in the beginning, and then in 1959 they became National Aeronautics and Space Administration. But it was the NACA back in the day. And God bless you, Jack Martin. We miss you. He was 90 years old, and try to do a little program about Jack, but and he was usually here on Thursdays to talk about Tales of Cape Canaveral. There is the lighthouse. It has seen every launch, of course, that has happened there. That is off Pad 36 to the north, which is going to be occupied by a massively huge Blue Origin rocket. Let's see here. There is Mr. Harry Truman in 1961, as he was enjoying being an ex-president, with Mr. James Webb, NASA's administrator during the Apollo program. And there you see, in fact, it's odd that Webb resigned in 1968 before the moon landing, but it was purely political because the Nixon administration had won the election, and he knew that he had to step down because these are political appointments there. So Harry Truman, I've been to his presidential library in Missouri, and very interesting president. In fact, Marty, when he retired as president, there was no Secret Service to protect him, and there was no income for him as our president. And he went on speaking, and he had no job. He really was a lawyer, I think he was, and he wasn't going to practice law. How could you have a president representing you and not win the case? So the Congress created a stipend allowance for ex-presidents because of Harry Truman. And there is Rocket Ranch, okay, over there. The VAB would be the far left of this picture there. But there's what we call the Rocket Ranch. That is, though, more spooky to think about. That is Rocket Row, that had interballistic rockets that could have warheads on them and easily reach Cuba, our adversaries there, or Moscow, and hit the United Socialist country of the Soviet Union. That's how it all started, and then we converted that to peacetime efforts in there. Always a beautiful picture to look at that, Marty. So we do want to give a little history lesson as we look at the Cape area from a satellite view. Of course, it sticks out like a little horn in the middle of our state, and in the center is Merritt Island. You see that it's separated on one side. Where the puffy clouds are, that's about where Titusville is up there. Well, named Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, when President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, 6 days after his death, President Johnson came on TV. This was Thanksgiving evening, and among other things, recommended the renaming of the entire Cape in honor of the fallen president. This was to reassure America in this huge tragedy, which 50-some years later, we still don't know who actually fired the bullets that killed our beloved president. So, for 10 years, from 1963 to 73, the area was called Cape Kennedy Air Force Base, and it was Cape Kennedy Space Center.
Kennedy Space Center.
Pardon me?
Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah, right. Kennedy Space Center. John F. Kennedy Space Center. And so actually, that was not too popular on the Florida from the outset, especially the bordering city of Cape Canaveral. All right. The name was approved by the U.S. Board of Geographic Names of the Department of the Interior. All right. And Florida went along with it for about 10 years until in 1973, the Florida legislature passed a law restoring the former 400-year-old name of Cape Canaveral. And so on October 9th, 1973, it reverted back to Cape Canaveral. And Senator Ted Kennedy, the brother of the fallen president, said it was a democratic decision by the Florida citizens and that they understood it and that NASA's Kennedy Space Center retained the Kennedy name. So, of course, he couldn't quibble about that. So, 73 years later, Cape Canaveral now leases these launch complexes that you see right there to various companies. The government actually retains Launch Complex 39B and 39A, which are not on Cape Canaveral property. That is Kennedy Space Center property. But there you see the layout of all the famous launch centers there. 14 launched the Mercury, 19 launched the Gemini, and today these are all being reused by private companies that are leasing them. Blue Origin has leased Pad 36. United Launch Alliance leases Pad 41 that you see there in red. 39A, or actually Pad 40, is a SpaceX. They launched a lot of their Starlink satellites there. And 39A at Kennedy Space Center is where Elon Musk and SpaceX launch humans to the International Space Station or Earth orbit. Interestingly enough, they wanted to go up further north. There was plans for a Nova class, bigger than the Saturn. A Nova rocket was going to be built, and that was called Launch Complex 42, which was never built. There was going to be above the Mosquito Lagoon was going to be a Nova vertical assembly building, and that was going to be our spaceship to go to Mars as well as the moon, the Nova. And a third Saturn V pad was planned. As you see, LC39C in white at the top is penciled in up there. And I recently went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting where we heard a NASA representative talk about Pad 49A might be built right up against the beaches of Playa Linda. Just a little bit, about a mile away from 39B, they are proposing Pad 49 for SpaceX to launch its gigantic Starship. And they're also working, SpaceX is at Launch Complex 39A right now on a Starship pad there. That was confirmed by the NASA representative we had at an event. So, of course, all of this put into motion by President Truman 73 years ago created the wonderful world we live in today. But boy, did things change fast, Marty. Where was the Starlight Motel? Do you remember?
Yeah.
What was the crossroads? Was that at 520 or?
Just off of 520, just south of 520.
Okay, which would have been one of the.
I think where Ron Johns is.
Yeah. About where Ron Johns is. Okay. All right. Over there by Beachside Hotel and all. All right. Starlight Motel. Look at that. We love. Look at that. Look at that station wagon, Marty. That 56 Ford. You think, huh? All right. And of course, the rest is history. They kept launching rockets over and over again. Over 350 Atlas Centaur rockets or derivatives of that were launched from Cape Canaveral, putting up hundreds of satellites and missions to the moon, unmanned missions to the moon, including Surveyor, Ranger, and Lunar Orbiter. And you can go out and pay, I think, $30 and do a special tour and go out to Hangar C and see a snark That is the rocket called a Snark that had wings on it, and you see the engine air exhaust here, and they put a little face on it there like a shark called the Snark. And so many of them were aborted before they reached their full velocity or altitude, that they're in the ocean, and Atlantic Ocean, and it's called the Snark Infested Waters. So this is at Hangar C, and we do hope to bring you a few shows from there as soon as the director out there can get that okayed with NASA management, which is jumping through a lot of hoops. But Marty, sadly enough, those wonderful launch structures came down in the 2000s and 1990s. There's Pad 17 being brought down in a historic demolition of one of the more historic pads out there. In fact, they leveled almost all of the pads down to the flat concrete and are allowing the new space companies to do with what they want on those pads. So, always standing though, there is the light tower with my friends from the Museums of Brevard. Oh, I'm in that picture somewhere, maybe. Or I think I took that picture. But there's representatives of over 20 museums of Brevard, which the lighthouse is involved in. And yeah, there I am with my hat there in the back and beard. There you go. And that's a great tour that you have to pay money to go out and see too. But beautiful facility out there, and they have as much pride in that lighthouse as we do in our artifacts here at the American Space Museum. Well, Marty, we have any comments or questions from our wonderful Stay Curious followers out there on YouTube, Twitch, Spotify, and of course Facebook Live on there. We thank Professor Keith Sewell for watching, Larry Pushkar, thank you, Paul Forrester, Tony Achilles. Tony's waiting for that next auction to help support our museum. Thank you, Tony. Can't wait to see you in our museum again. Robert Law, thank you for watching up in Scotland, and him and Larry both saw the picture of my little granddaughter, as did Tom Usiak and Mark Usiak. I had my daughter and 6-month-old grandbaby in town last few days, so we had them on the show for Stay Curious Monday, if you want to go back and check it out. Thank you, Carlton Bailey, for watching. Dave Stange, always thank you for your inquisitive questions. And we'll be seeing Mark Usiak here in town in June, Marty, for the Hall of Fame induction of astronauts, and we will get to meet Chris Calley at that time. We'll have Chris, I think in about 4 weeks he'll be on Stay Curious. No, yeah, probably about 4 weeks from today we'll be having him on. Yes?
Keith Sewell just used 1,200 stars.
Thank you, Keith, for 1,200 stars there. He's an educator at Kennedy Visitors Complex, and he'll be teaching back in the fall again. So wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all for supporting us any way you can, but it's important that you're watching us every day, as our board of directors has found out that this video podcast is reaching around the world and making the American Space Museum a name for itself as what we do. We celebrate the birth of the American space age right in this delivery room, Brevard County. So I want to get you all hopped up a little bit before we say goodbye, to lose a little sleep on Sunday night before you go to work Monday, because we're going to have a total eclipse of the moon. We'll talk more about that Friday. We talked about it Monday. Yes, a question, Marty.
Yeah, Dave Stange asked, didn't someone once think the lighthouse was a rocket and had their camera trained on it by the state during a launch?
Absolutely. That has been, the early rocket photographers thought that was the rocket. Particularly Pad 36 with an Atlas rocket was right behind it. So yeah, they had it trained many times. And then, imagine that you're being a photographer, and in the early days, of course, you're using film and these big bulky cameras. You get it all set up and you go, hey, nothing happened, and you see behind it go up. Yeah, good point there, Dave. And I have seen a good Photoshop of the actual lighthouse being launched in a Photoshop thing. We'll research that picture one day. But we want you to keep your eye to the sky Sunday night. The fireworks are going to start with the partial eclipse starting think of it this way, think that the partial eclipse starts at 10:30, full phase at 11:30, and it's all over by 1:30, okay? You have about 40 minutes where the moon is going to be going through the Earth's shadow and the darkest part of it from about 11:30 to 1 o'clock. It'll be over with, but then the partial phases will continue until it returns to full phase. So it's going to be interesting. What is the color going to be? A ruddy red, a bright red? It's always a question. The last one we saw was in 2019, and I'll show you some pictures of that tomorrow to help you stay curious. But just priming the pump a little bit. If you set your alarm for 11:30 Sunday night, if you go to bed at 9 or 10 because you get up at 5, set your alarm at 11:30, get up, and you will see the total eclipse phase, and take a picture of it. Or the next few days, you have a great opportunity to take a beautiful picture of the moon and the moonrise with some ambient light of the Earth, like this photograph I took of a moonrise a year or so ago over the Atlantic Ocean off of Cape Canaveral. The moon illusion, you can always cover that moon up with your little finger outstretched, but the next few nights as it's rising above the mountains, the trees, the buildings, or the ocean, wherever you live, it's going to look so big like you couldn't put a baseball in front of it, all right? But you can always cover up with your little finger. It's just a half a degree across. It's an illusion in our mind caused by the proximity of Earth objects to this beautiful satellite neighbor of ours in space. So, yes.
Dave Stang, Triple T on Friday? Question?
Probably not. Triple T's still ill, so we're not going to count on him being in the house tomorrow. But thanks for asking. But if he is, he'll be here. But I talked to him today, and he's still recuperating from some just being a little bit down with like flu-like symptoms. So thanks for the question there, and we hope you all get out and get a little moonshine tonight. It's the only kind of moonshine you can't get too much of. And we know that y'all can't get too much of space news and space history here on Stay Curious, and we're grateful that you join us. On behalf of our wonderful museum here, led by Executive Director Karen Conklin, I appreciate the help of Marty and Jessica Galloway to make this a smooth program for you all out there. And until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette. Can't wait to see you to bridge the space between us.